Thanks, everyone. Hi, my name is Jurre van Bergen. I'm a technologist at Amnesty International, specifically at the security lab. And today we're going to talk about a web of surveillance, where we're going to unravel a murky network of spyware and surveillance exports to Indonesia. So the security lab basically sits within Amnesty Tech. We are a multidisciplinary team of researchers, hackers, coders, campaigners, and advocates. And we work to protect civil society from unlawful digital surveillance, spyware, and other human rights abuses enabled by technology. You might remember us from some of our previous reports that we did. In 2021, we did the Pegasus project about NSO Group's spyware. Last year in October, we did the Predator files about Nexa Technologies, Amnesty, and Indonesia. And so, just a small reminder, in case you don't know what spyware is. Spyware is a malicious software which enables a spyware operator to gain covert access to information from a target computer system or device. And we also kind of use a specific term for this, is that we label certain spyware that can be limited in its use as a highly invasive spyware. So the scale of the spyware threat is kind of high, but it's also tough at times to kind of forensically confirm. So we are able to successfully confirm the targeting of journalists in 19 countries across the world. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, mainly because we only see the tip of the iceberg. The scale of abuse is much higher. Apple, in April of this year, sent out the Apple alerts to users in 92 countries across the world. These spyware systems are sold for millions and millions of euros. And thanks to leaked Indonesia quotes, we're kind of able to put an individual price tag to a successful infection, which is between 10 and 20,000 euro, which might be higher depending on whether you want extra options. Kind of a menu, right? And so, why Indonesia? We were talking with some journalists in Indonesia from Tempo, and they were like, we hear there might be some kind of spyware active in the country, but we are not able to kind of like prove it. And how could we prove something like this? And so kind of our investigation found evidence of extensive sales, deployment, and presence of highly invasive spyware and other surveillance technologies in Indonesia that was delivered through mostly Singapore, from Europe, Israel, and Malaysia between 2017 and 2023. We managed to identify 6 different spywares. So NSO Group, Intellectual Alliance, Kangaroo, Finfisher, Wintergill System, and one we have now been able to attribute to a specific spyware system. Sales were made to either companies who were acting as brokers and the government agencies based in Indonesia, mainly the Indonesian National Police and the Cyber and Crypto Agency. Several of these imports passed through intermediary companies, who were 3 of them were related to each other in some way by a company located in Indonesia. And we also managed to identify numerous spyware domains targeting kind of like opposition political parties and major national and local news outlets, including media from Papua and West Papua with a history of documenting human rights abuses. And so we did this together with several media partners, Tempo in Indonesia, Haaretz in Israel, WAF Research Group and VOS in Switzerland, and Inside Story in Greece. And so there's a bit of a challenge here, as you might have noticed that on this conference we tend to really focus on a lot of digital evidence, which we also use as well, but we also use a variety of different methodology and sources to kind of like expose them. As this ecosystem is rather murky, we have to do a lot of get rather creative in trying to kind of like get that evidence. So we kind of relied on commercial trade databases like Panjiva, Folsa, and 52WMB, tender databases, mapping of spyware companies and its subsidiaries by buying company records, open source intelligence by looking at subsidiaries, internet, where people tend to publish on their blogspot with spyware they're selling, surprisingly enough, or apps like GetContact, where people upload address books in order to identify which number is maybe calling them. Spyware infrastructure mapping, and some previously published research by various other NGOs and research groups. So to kind of give you an overview of kind of the different sources that we use to kind of map some of these subsidiaries. There's a nice tool called Open Corporates. They have basically company records from a bunch of countries across the world. So here you can kind of see someone called Tal Jonathan Dillian. You're able to kind of like look up someone that was either previously or currently involved with Intellexa. You might notice something funny is that there is nothing that indicates Intellexa or Citrox here. I'll get to that in a second. And there's some other difficulties here, is that a lot of these companies rely on jurisdictions like the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus, or Singapore, where obtaining beneficial ownership data is quite complicated, meaning that you might only get the name of a company secretary. Making it a lot harder, and in order not to get libeled, you want to be sure of this. And so there's some other databases that we use. OCCRP is a journalistic project that focuses on corruption, on exposing corruption and wrongdoing and crime. And they also have some of these company databases as well as a bunch of public and private databases. So you might be able to find that, people actually have various companies across the world, but actually also have some kind of land ownership across the world, which comes handy if you want to do mapping of their assets across the world. There's some other things that are rather useful to know. Sometimes you might not be able to find beneficial ownership data because it's obscured. But there's ways on buying company records and looking at past shareholders or loans. This might reveal kind of like useful information to be able to map particular companies like brokers located in Singapore to a particular company in Indonesia. In this case, Sastrawan Kamto was an Indonesian citizen set up or had at least shares in one of the companies where spyware was flowing through in Singapore. Depending on the country, here in Ireland, you're actually able to get a list of subsidiaries of companies that are related to Intellexa. So this is a small extract of that. You can see that they had companies in Ireland, Greece, the British Virgin Islands, Switzerland, Greece, and Cyprus. This is from the company here in Ireland called Telestros. We also made use of the tender databases. So this is where government agencies were like, hey, we're looking for a particular system. In this case, they opened a tender for a zero-click system. This is not something you will see a lot, I think, in other tender databases. They kind of did a little oopsie there. But it is kind of useful to kind of show that PT Radhika Kaya Utama, where Sastrawan Kamto was involved in, previously won a tender to deliver a zero-click system. Although, as you can see, it's not entirely clear which zero-click system they bought. As well as trade databases. So there's a variety of trade databases across the world. 52WMB, Folsa, Panjiva, there's a bunch of others. They basically buy data, I guess, from customs and trade data and shipment companies, and they kind of like make that available for a certain fee a month. So what we kind of did here is that you want to be able to map a lot of the subsidiaries to be able to look at which subsidiary in which country actually was maybe possibly involved in exporting spyware. So in this one, Pasitora was a company run by Tal Didion, based in Cyprus, and they were involved in sending one of their tools, products to Bangladesh. Another one we've been able to find is White Global Holdings, which is related to a company that Sastra Van Kamto had shares in, which delivered a proprietary Android one-click installation module, which kind of sounds like spyware. And so, having done a bunch of that, we started wanting to figure out how much spyware can we actually shake out of the tree. So one was that we found good old FinFisher. So Citizen Lab found Indonesian spyware servers back in 2013. They also published a report in 2015, attributed FinFisher users to the national encryption body based in Indonesia. And Nexus Now documented a Indonesian Android FinSpy sample 2016. In 2021, we saw through one of their subsidiaries in Malaysia a shipment of hardware to a company in Indonesia called Digital Solusi Prima. Unclear if this hardware was spyware or another surveillance product, or kind of what the intended end-user recipient was. And we made sure that it was actually FinFisher by buying some of the company records in Malaysia, which, as you can see, the above is the extract from Malaysia, and down below is the main shareholder company in Germany, and the main shareholder of Radari's M8 in Germany was FinFisher Holdings. And other than that, you kind of might know what FinFisher is up to right now. It's insolvent. They shut down. There's a criminal case in Germany who found about FinFisher exporting to Turkey. We used it to spy on opposition members without a valid export license. This case is ongoing, and it's no longer an active spyware company. So that's one. So Windigo is maybe a company you might not have heard about as much. It's an Israeli-based company. Not a lot is known about their product offering, but we found several malicious domains targeting Indonesia and two companies in Singapore, Ataka Enterprises and ESW Systems, involved in a sale on Windigo products to the Indonesian National Police. We're currently unclear if there was one or multiple deals. So Ataka Enterprises, on their website, they advertise a cyber intelligence system. That's the, when we publish the screenshot on the left is what it looks like right now, but using the web archive, we can kind of like unmask it and show that previously they actually listed Windigo as their screenshot. And then by looking at export records, we're able to see that the Wind system was shipped from ESW Systems to the Indonesian National Police in 2019. And Wind, which is one of the products, is advertised as being able to extract data from Wi-Fi from target devices. And ESW System is related to Radica. So Radica has multiple entities in Indonesia, and so one of the entities, they specifically listed a Android-based investigation system, a web information collection system. And one of the employees of Ataka Enterprises, who published her schoolwork on a random blogspot domain, also listed the Helios Android and tactical web intelligence system sold to the Indonesian National Police, who was one of the main clients. And so another funny thing is that Tempo reported, the media partner in Indonesia, that Radica also showed up in phone books like Get Contact of Pak Sastra, boss of Radica, Sastra, vendor of Windigo. So unfortunately, the companies in Singapore and Indonesia never responded to inquiries. And so we're kind of unable to verify whether that refers to the Helios agent or the Wind product, but at least we know that the Wind product was delivered by looking at the shipment data. So we found we did a bunch of internet scanning. We found domains that were mimicking Tribune News, who had a HTML frame to Cool Brand Labs. The screenshot is from URL scan, which was off to a domain based out of Israel. By looking at the domain and the range, there was FortiGate system firewall on that range of IPs. Luckily for us, one of the sysadmins had a publicly accessible folder that listed the domain, the IP of a Fortinet firewall on a domain with one IP difference called wint.txt. From those IPs, we were able to find more domains. We were able to pivot to find other mimicking domains targeting either the EU and Senegal. Let's do. Intellexa. For those who are still awake in the afternoon, you might see that they have various names for the spyware, Predator, Helios, and Arrows. But Windigo also has a product called Helios, which is slightly confusing. So we found several malicious domains that imitate legitimate Indonesian news websites. Through internet scanning, we found a server in Indonesia that matches a fingerprint for an Intellexa Predator backend server. So there was one day where they actually had this exposed, so we were able to find the IP of the backend. Unfortunately, we've not been able to determine who the end user was. And so in December 2021, we see a backend server exposed. In March 2022, we see various Predator domains, West Papua and Indonesia News. And in 2023, we see more domains popping up that might be either referring to either the Galora news websites or a political party. This backend server matches a fingerprint of a Citrox, which is their sister company that focuses on Android, based in northern Macedonia, had the exact same fingerprint showing up. These days, they got sanctioned. In 2023, they got entity listed. Earlier this year, in March, some of the people and corporate entities got sanctioned by the US government. And in mid-September, more people got sanctioned by Intellexa. Currently, WAS, which is a Swiss media, reported that a criminal case was opened in Switzerland against one of the people involved in Intellexa. It's three, but that's not all. We found more shipment records, in this case about another spyware called Kangaroo with a Cyrus product. It was quite distinct, as they explicitly listed in the shipment records as being a cyber intelligence infiltration system, agent concurrency, and infiltration-exfiltration system. Luckily for us, there was a news media in Israel called The Marker who published a quote proposal, which kind of like lines up with the exact hardware that's being shipped, as well as certain particular terminology used in the same quote proposal. We kind of found this by doing kind of reverse shipment lookups by looking at shipments towards the Indonesian National Police. This was brought through a broker in Singapore from Israel called Heya to the Indonesian National Police. So a short timeline, in May, July of 2020, there were shipments, so in January of 2021 to the Indonesian National Police. We kind of found some of the first domains in November 2020, as well as in more domains by Citizenlab and Microsoft in 2021. And their report also identified a suspected Kangaroo infection domain, Indo-Progress, which imitates a left-leaning Indonesian news website. In 2022, we spotted more possible Kangaroo domains being registered. Currently, we're not entirely sure who the beneficial owner is of Heya, as that information is not available to us. And so Kangaroo, in November 2021, got entity listed together with NSO Group for being involved in the spyware trade that threatens government officials, journalists, business people, activists, academics, and embassy workers. That's four. And so we started looking whether NSO Group might have been active in Indonesia as well, and we found some evidence. So in the top, you can see an extract from a Citizen Lab report about Circles. Circles is a company the NSO Group bought in 2014, which was run by Tal Dilian. We might know from Intellexa. Basically, Circles is a geolocalization and interception tool. They publish some of the IPs, and it looks like by doing a WUIS on one of the IPs, we see a familiar-looking company called Radika Kota Utama, which seems like a type of Radika Kaya Utama. There's the T and the Y are next to each other on the keyboard. As well as that, we've identified shipments around that era, which might be a bit. Sorry about that, about the resolution, but they were shipped in the 15 December 2020, being a Dell server and a Cisco router. So Indonesia leaks associates Radika with acquiring Pegasus back in 2017. Amnesty International, we kind of been able to confirm the hardware shipment that they also found by Indonesian leaks from Luxembourg to Indonesia. NSO, like after kind of sending NSO Group a allegation letter, they responded that they currently have no active systems in Indonesia. So now we're kind of like stuck in this like spyware forest, I guess. So part of the conclusion here is that Indonesian authorities have spent like tens of millions on spyware products from numerous surveillance vendors with little transparency or oversight. The full extent of sales is likely to be higher, as we've only been able to identify some declared customs values by looking at shipment data. We're also not entirely sure what the targets are. It was not we've not been able to find targets, and they were not a focus on this investigation. So even when we know spyware is used, it can still be difficult to find and forensically confirm cases, especially because it's easier to perform forensics on an iOS device than an Android device currently. As well as that, people in Indonesia tend to radically change phone every year or so, making acquiring evidence quite complicated. So we wrote to the authorities, including the Indonesian National Police and intelligence bodies, for comment, but they did not. We did not receive any response from them. Another conclusion is that there's lots of opportunities here to strengthen threat intel research with OSINT approaches, as you might have seen. So I encourage you all to become little journalists, I guess. Some of these companies got entity listed or got sanctioned. Finfisher is dead. I was just checking earlier this week that Windigo's Office Firewall just dropped off the internet on the 28th of September. Maybe it's dead now as well. As you might have seen, the EU is still not taking any action. And Ireland and Intellexa, I'm not sure what's going on there, but we'll have to some answers, especially as Ireland has been joining calls to combat spyware. Other than that, thank you. You can read our full report on securitylab.amnesty.org. I wonder if we have time for questions.